Welcome to the Middle Podcast. My name is Travis Gale, founder of The Middle, and today I'll be speaking with Raymond Perrier. Raymond is the director of the Denis Hurley Centre, an interfaith community centre in the heart of Durban, South Africa, which helps the poor and the marginalised in our city. Before 2015, Raymond held leadership positions in different Catholic NGOs, as director of the Jesuit Institute in Johannesburg, South Africa, and as a project director in a Ugandan refugee camp with the Jesuit Refugee Service. Prior to that, for 14 years, he worked professionally for global marketing consultancy Interbrand, eventually as managing director of their New York office. Born in the UK, Raymond now lives in Durban, South Africa, and actively works to bring change where it's needed most. And this episode is dedicated to all of those who are seeking to address needs within our society, who are running NGOs, who are looking to make change happen, but are struggling with the constant challenges. It's tough to continuously wade against the tide, taking 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. And in this episode, we asked Raymond how he has sustained his passion and commitment for his work, despite the numerous challenges he has to face every single day. We talk through how he navigates the middle of social justice and active citizenship. We explore how he keeps his perspective in a healthy place, and how he has avoided burnout or the desire to give up. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with Raymond and pick up some helpful insights around how to fuel grit and stay the course. Let's get into the middle and hear more about soul-fueled grit with Raymond Perrier. Great, Raymond. It is so good to have you on the Middle Podcast. It's been a while since we've spoken, but every time we do speak, it's an absolute pleasure and it's very insightful. So thank you for joining us this morning.
Travis, it's a joy to talk to you, and I'm really honored to be invited to speak.
Great. I think we could speak for hours, but I think one of the reasons why I really wanted to invite you onto this platform is because of the grit and the resilience that you've displayed, and really just staying the course with the work that you do, especially because it's in the space of social change and social justice. So my hope is that this conversation is just an encouragement to all those who are facing challenges and adversity and are maybe at the edge of the line of giving up.
Absolutely, and I hope that people see that the challenges we face are reasons to keep going rather than reasons to give up.
Great. So maybe just let's talk about who you are and what you do for those of you who don't know you as well as I do. So just some context into what you've currently been doing and how long you've been doing it for.
Cool. So my name is Raymond Perrier, a fancy French name, but I'm actually of Indian origin. Both my parents were born in India. And I am the director of the Denis Hurley Centre, which is an interfaith community project right in the heart of Durban, between the cathedral and the mosque and the main markets. And we work there with and for homeless people, refugees, drug users, some of the most marginalised communities in central Durban, providing very basic, simple, straightforward, direct assistance. We're feeding people, we're providing access to primary healthcare, helping people sort out IDs, helping people reunite with their families, get into rehab programs, training programs, and so on.
And how long have you been at the Denis
I've
Hurley
been
Centre?
there since the Denis Hurley Centre started, which is now almost 9 years. I intended to come for 2 years, and it's now 9 years, and I'm still there.
And you've had an incredibly dynamic background. So maybe just a little bit of an overview of your journey prior to Denis Hurley Centre.
Yes, absolutely. So I've been involved in church-based NGO work in the broader sense for the last 20 years. But before that, my initial professional work was in advertising and marketing. So I worked for what was then the world's largest branding consultancy, a group called Interbrand, initially in London, and then running their New York office around the turn of the millennium. And in fact, my initial interaction with South Africa was through Interbrand. So back in the 90s, I was working with people like SAB and Tiger Foods and ABSA and so on, South African companies that post-liberation were for the first time able to move outside of South Africa, but also facing competition inside South Africa from overseas brands. So we did a lot of branding consulting work with those groups there. So that's when I first got to see South Africa. My first glimpse of South Africa were places like Sandton and Rosebank. and I've since learnt that there's a lot more to South Africa than the shiny glass towers.
Sure.
But I had a sort of midlife moment. Gave up the world of advertising. I joined a Catholic religious organization called the Jesuits, and I was with them for 6 years. Left the Jesuits, but still involved in, as I say, church-based NGOs, and have worked in the UK, in Uganda, and now in South Africa for 13 years.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. That's the beauty about you and what you do, is that you've been in corporate, you've seen the challenges there. You're now in the NGO sector, I suppose, or the faith-based sector, and you've seen the challenges there. So maybe just a little bit on, for those who think that there aren't challenges on the other side, how common are these challenges across the board?
Absolutely, lots of commonality, lots of the same issues in terms of recruiting the right people, getting the funds, whether it's from customers or clients or donors, staying focused on what you're good at, not being distracted by the latest novelty or chasing things which are a bit evanescent. And I think importantly, helping people to really draw on their deeper sense of who they are when they're at work. And I think one of our biggest challenges, whatever sector we operate in, is a splitting, a compartmentalization between the person who goes to work and the person we are for the rest of our lives. And that's really unhealthy. It's unhealthy for the individual. Any kind of compartmentalization is unhealthy. It means that you're not at your most effective when you're working, but it also means that you start to develop some resentment towards what you do because you don't feel it's really you. One of the tasks I was doing, my previous job in South Africa, was with an organization called the Jesuit Institute in Johannesburg. And one of the things we did there was work with Gibbs and Wits Business School, teaching programs for people as part of an MBA to reflect on how they could engage their spiritual selves, whatever that spirituality was, how they could engage that with their role in business, their role in government, their role in the third sector, whatever their professional role was.
I found that so interesting. I think there's awareness around that, but perhaps just to talk about it a little bit, you talking to Gibbs and to, Wits, these are leadership schools. What is the link between our spiritual selves and what we do in corporate? How are they approaching that, just as a conversation in those spaces?
So I think one of the challenges that the corporate world has, and the business schools have, is they are scared of the language of spirituality, and they're anxious that they're going to tread on toes and they're going to offend people, or they're going to give the impression that they're on one side of an argument versus another. That's a big problem in the UK and in the States, where I think people are much more anxious about secularization. What I found in South Africa, which makes it a much easier environment in which to operate, a much healthier one, is that there is an acceptance that spirituality is a part of our world and a part of most people's lives. I always joke that finding an atheist in South Africa is almost impossible. So for example, I remember after the World Cup, it was fascinating that the president suggested there should be a day of prayer and thanksgiving for the success of the World Cup. And nobody thought that at all strange. And of course, everyone should pray in the way that they want to pray. But the notion that people should pray for what was, after all, a very secular event didn't seem at all strange. So what I was doing in those programs is saying to people, when you come to work, it is okay to talk about your faith life. It is okay to talk about your spirituality. It is okay to talk to other people about theirs if they're willing to share about it, because you will be most effective, you will be most yourself, and you will be most moral when you are able to connect your spirituality with what you do at work. And of course, the other side of that is that the faith organizations are themselves not sure how to engage with that. I remember a Catholic friend of mine who's the head of a big PR firm in Joburg once said to me, "It seems that the church is more interested in what I do in the bedroom than what I do in the boardroom." And I thought that's a very good way of putting it. The church really, really should be interested in what people of faith are doing in their professional lives, but it doesn't really know how to engage on those things.
Absolutely. We've done a couple of episodes around mental health. The last one was around functional depression, and there's been a lot of feedback that I've received just around people feeling dry. It's very transactional. It's work is a necessary grudge. It's just about the daily survival, the daily grind, and you're raising this topic, and I think it's quite pertinent that there's something missing. There's perhaps a reconnection with purpose, a bigger picture, and as you say, our spirituality that might really help us in those situations.
Yeah, so there's that very simple model of looking at ourselves in terms of mind, body, heart, and soul, and the need to feed all four of those, the need to draw on all of those, and recognize that when one of those is suffering, let's say the body is suffering because of an illness or because of stress, that we're able to draw on the resources of the mind, the resources of the heart, and the resources of the soul to compensate.
Yeah. Every time I've met you or just seen you out on the streets in the hood, you're
Cycling on
exceptionally
the beachfront.
positive. Yeah, into the headwind. You're exceptionally positive. You always seem to be, moving forward, maintaining momentum. And you briefly touched on what you do at Denis Hurley Centre. I've got a little bit more insight into it. It's an exceptionally challenging environment to work. What are some of the challenges that you've had to face, and how do you just keep yourself so motivated and so optimistic and hopeful, I guess, within that space?
So there are three sets of challenges, one very obvious and two much less obvious. The obvious one are the people with whom we work. So we're working with some of the hardest cases, if you like, people who've become really disenfranchised, disconnected with wider society, don't really have any skin in the game, don't have much to fight for, either have given up or are looking for easy ways out, which might be through crime or through drugs, and so it can be difficult to work with. They commit to doing things, they don't follow through. We expect them to turn up for something, they don't arrive. We ask them to take their medicines, they don't take their medicines, and so on. But actually, that is not the greatest challenge because that's obvious, because we know that's what we're working with, and we roll with that. So, for example, I'll give you a clear example of that. We have a lot of homeless guys who have TB and who are HIV positive. And we can keep them healthy, but we can only keep them healthy if they're taking their medication every day. And if you're living life on the streets and your life is chaotic, then taking medication every day is pretty hard. But if you don't really care about your health, then you don't make the effort to do so. What we found is that once we demonstrate how much we care about their health, like when I say we, I really mean the social workers and the clinicians and the nurses who are working with them, they begin to take an interest in their own health. So we have to model that for them, and then they kind of catch up with us. And we see the transformation. A young woman came in the other day, physically absolutely transformed from the woman who we sent off to a rehab a few years ago, just looking so healthy and so happy and such a different person. So there's that area of challenge. The other two, though, are the harder ones. One, I have to say, is working with people. People are difficult. Staff are difficult. Volunteers are difficult. They don't do what you want them to do. They get obsessed with all kinds of weird, petty stuff. And most of the time they don't, of course. And I don't want to suggest that, we've got a really exemplary group of staff, but every now and then something comes up and I think, really? Are you honestly concerned about that? Oh no, we're going to have to sit down and talk about this. Just get over it. It doesn't matter. It's such a small thing in the scheme of things. And I think that is it's a problem for people who work in the NGO world, where so much of who they are is defined by their activity and by their sense of purpose. They find it quite hard to maintain some distance from that. And I find it hard to step back and just kind of laugh at themselves and say, I was taking it a bit too seriously. So we do more work now than we used to in building up our staff, giving them opportunities to talk about what they're doing, giving them opportunities to inspire each other and to learn from each other, and so on. And then by far the biggest challenge is working with a government which at all levels, national, provincial, and municipal, is either not interested or most of the time positively hostile to the people with whom we work. And that is just shocking. It's just frankly disgusting. that a group of politicians supposedly committed to liberation do not see the liberation of the poorest people in our society as part of their mandate. So we are constantly having to speak out for people, to use Hurley's phrase, to be a voice for the voiceless, to say what's really going on the streets, and we're able to do that because we don't take any funding from government, so they can't threaten us as they do with lots of other NGOs. They say, well, you better not speak out against us because you won't get the grant next year. So we retain our independence so that we can say when the government is screwing up, and it regularly does. And also, on the few occasions it does deliver, we'll applaud them for that as well.
Yo, I mean, I'm making some links between your world and the world of people that I work with. So those three categories, I mean, you've got factors that are not within your control, specific to the mission, and then you've got the very real reality of trying to organize a group of people towards collective goals, and the relationship challenges that come in that. And then, of course, the last one is for those that are operating in our country, but certainly those that are operating in other countries, there's economic and government challenges to wade through. So it's always such a good thing to talk to others who are in other sectors or other industries or other organizations, and that the challenges that we all face are very much the same. We're trying to achieve something, but we are at times wading through mud, working against the tide in order to get there.
So you ask, how do I keep going in the face of those challenges? The very straightforwardly, because to me it matters. It matters that I get out of bed. It matters that I do what I do, and it matters for me because I get a huge amount of personal satisfaction and self-actualization from doing this. But also, I hope, and I think we can demonstrate this, it matters to the people that we serve, and it matters to broader society. So I suppose for me, that's a big shift from where I was. So when I worked in branding and marketing, I loved what I did. It was enormous fun. I had great colleagues, really interesting intellectual challenges. But at the end of the day, it didn't really matter. It was kind of, did that choice of brand name really make a difference in the scheme of things? Did the fact that whichever the company was, BP or Amex, make even more profits next year, did it really matter? Of course it didn't. And so it was harder to find the external motivation for that. And I have to say, for me, a lot of that was the intellectual motivation. I did the job because it really made my head zing, and I enjoyed that. And I love making money. When I made money, it was great fun. Now doing a job where actually the one person, and it's one person a week, one person a month even, who comes into my office and says, oh, by the way, this is what happened. Thanks very much. And that's enough. And when people say, "Oh, don't you get depressed by that?" I point out in the gospel, a great story. Jesus cures the 10 lepers, and only one of them came back to say thank you. So a 10% thank you rate seems to be about the norm, and that's okay. I'll happily take 10%. That's enough. Now, for me, I have a very strong sense of faith, and for me, I absolutely believe this is a mission given to me and given to the other people with whom I work, given to us by God, and that we are accountable to God. And if I don't do it, then I've got to explain why I haven't done it, and why I didn't live up to the challenge I've been given.
Maybe just talk about those two for a second, because I think the matters piece, which I completely align with, what I sometimes see in people is what really did matter and what they really did connect with over time. The challenges almost start to snuff out that fire. The challenges start to overtake the passion and the fuel that was there. How have you found that you've had to reconnect with what matters, even though it's the same thing? We talk about in the middle, we've got to reconnect with our story. Are you quite intentional about reminding yourself about why you started what you do and why it matters?
Yes, I am. So, and that's because I have to do it for my team. So part of my role as a leader is to help my fellow managers, to help our staff members to connect with why it matters for them. So in doing that for them, obviously I'm doing that for myself at the same time. You can't preach what you're not living. But I also do it because it's part of my own faith practice, and this is something very much out of my years of formation as a Jesuit, of constantly reconnecting what I'm doing with my principles, with my driving sense of motivation, whether that's in prayer, whether that's in retreats every year or so, through talking to a spiritual director, a sense that of stepping back and asking those questions.
Hmm. So it would strike me that in the absence of one being intentional about those, and those are reconnects that you're doing, short reconnects during the week, as well as longer ones like a retreat. In the absence of doing those things, the water can run out the bucket here, and we can be left dry.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me share a lovely way of thinking about this from a wonderful Benedictine monk in the UK called Chris Jameson. And Chris Jameson was talking about the importance of regular reflection, and he was explaining this to a group of busy corporate workers, and they're saying, "Yeah, but it's fine enough. You're a monk. You live in a monastery, and they ring bells every few hours, and they tell you to go away and pray. But we're busy people. We have busy lives. We have families. We have businesses to run, and we just don't have the time." And he describes it this way. He says, imagine that there was a part of your body that was really essential, your eye or your left ear or your right hand or something. And you went to the doctor, and the doctor said to you, "I've got good news and I've got bad news. The bad news is that bit of your body is going to shrivel up and die away unless you give it some therapy. The good news is the only therapy you have to give it will take 15 minutes every day and is completely free. Would you find the 15 minutes?" And of course, everyone would say, "Of course I'd find 15 minutes. How ridiculous. Why wouldn't I find 15 minutes every day to save my ear or my eye or my hand?" So, well, that's what I offer you to think about in terms of your soul. Your soul, your deepest sense of who you are, is something which needs nurturing. And it needs nurturing not for the everyday, but for when things go wrong, for when you get sick, for when you lose a parent, for when things are tough at work, and you have to dig deep and draw on that most intimate resource. And the problem is, if you're not nurturing the soul, when you need it, you find that it's dried up and shriveled away, and it's not there for you. So you need to nurture it, and what you need to nurture it is about 15 minutes of silence every day. Sit in silence. Sit with God if you have a sense of religious faith. Sit with yourself if you don't, but just allow yourself to sit and connect with who you are at your deepest level, and that's all it takes. And it's kind of and I don't say I do it. I really do. I can't say I do that every day, but I know that that's the formula, and I know how to apply it, and I do it more often than not, and it makes a difference. And that is not, and alongside that, they're the other things. So do the bike rides, if that's what makes your body good. Do the classical music is my big thing. So that's what nurtures my heart. I read. That's what nurtures my mind. But that silence is what nurtures my soul.
I love the concept of nurturing. I think it nurtures my body, it nurtures my mind. There's a degree of you taking care of yourself. It is interesting that our previous episode was with Dr. Wendy Gravenstein, and she's spoken to functional depression. And in the piece around what to do when you're in that space, one of the things that she said that has a massive impact on the brain is entering into a state of awe, and finding awe again. I think that you're almost echoing her thoughts.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for me, the sense of awe. So I'm very lucky in that I get the sense of awe. So I live next to I work next to two awe-inspiring buildings: Emmanuel Cathedral, one of the most beautiful and oldest Christian buildings in the city, and the Grey Street Mosque, which has the joy. So I don't have bells; rather, I have the call to prayer 3 times a day from the mosque, and that's gorgeous. So that gives me that's a source of awe. And then I look at the people who come to us, and I look at the broken humanity, and I look at those who are transforming their lives, and that's a source of awe. And the people who do that. So being constantly willing to see those signs and say, yes, of course, there's terrible stuff around us, but oh my goodness, God is good. There is so much joy, and there is so much to give us heart and to give us courage, and then we give each other courage.
Okay, so this is really really taking care of one's soul, as you say, our spirituality, our inner selves, and then out of that space, being able to look at the challenges and the needs and everything that you're facing through a sense of mission rather than a sense of burden.
Oh, yes, yeah, yeah. No. If it were burden, there's no way I would do it. It would just be completely overwhelming. It's absolutely mission. So mission, of course, the key thing about mission is that it's outward looking. Burden is inward looking. Remember that beautiful definition that St. Augustine has of sin. He describes sin as being turned in on oneself. So even that, when I talk about those 15 minutes of silence to nurture the soul, that's not turning in on yourself. That's turning in order to turn out, because it's by digging deep that you are better able to engage with the outer world. So awe is all about looking beyond you and thinking, my goodness, isn't this extraordinary? And that, of course, is why people do climb the mountains and run the marathons and so on for that moment of awe, which is fantastic. And those are really important. Those high points are important, but we need to keep looking at it in our everyday lives. I live on the beachfront. I watch the sunrise over the ocean. I never get tired of that moment of watching the sunrise and just think, wow, yes, it's another day. So all of that stuff yesterday that didn't go well, that was awful, that I didn't deliver what I was supposed to do, I didn't finish those emails, I didn't get the reply I was expecting. It doesn't matter, because today is a new day. God's given me a new day. Let's start again. Let's start from clean slate.
That's very encouraging. I'm sure you've had a few people say to you, okay, Raymond, I get all of this, but you also went from corporate where I'm drowning, and you had this sort of spiritual experience, and now you're in this faith community. What about me? I mean, I can't go and plug out of this. How much of this is also about people finding what matters in that space? It might not necessarily be the outputs of the corporate, but there's so much that one can do within a corporate world that is meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is about finding it in what you do. So actually, I found in my last few years at Interbrand, when I was thinking about moving on but hadn't yet moved on, I didn't think, well, it doesn't matter because I'm going to leave, but rather how do I draw the best out of this? And when I said earlier, oh well, what's the point of it? It doesn't matter. I realized that maybe what our clients were doing didn't matter, but it did matter that we were providing meaningful work, and we were providing salaries to a whole group of people and their families and so on. And so I found I got a huge amount of satisfaction and fulfillment from focusing on the people I was managing and how they were working and whether they were drawing out of their work lives what they needed. So it was about finding the thing that gives you the sense of purpose, but you have to look for it. It's not going to come and slap you in the face. You need to look for it. You need to dig deep for it, and that also means getting a balance. So obviously, in any job, there are some things you do which you just have to do, and you don't really like them, and they seem a bit pointless to you. But because somebody else wants them, you have to deliver them. That's fine, and you have to do those. Don't say don't do them, but make sure there is a balance in your work life between those things and the things which do give you purpose. What I find instead people do is they write off the whole of their work lives as being purposeless, and they're chasing purpose in what they do outside of work. And that's the need to run the marathons and cycle across continents and do that, which is fine. But then when we spend whatever it is, 80% of our waking lives in employment, it's a bit dismal if you can't find anything which gives you purpose in that part of your life. So you can find it. You just have to look hard, and you will find people with whom you work who are looking for the same thing as well, and that's also important. You're not alone in this. We're all looking for the same. We're all looking for purpose. So let's have those conversations at work. How do I find purpose in this? You'll notice the people with whom you work who appear to be more driven, more motivated, a stronger sense of mission. So talk to them, ask them, well, what is it? What gets you so excited? And they start telling you what they do. I do a lot of work with teachers, really interesting. I do a lot of leadership work with teachers and principals. And that's a classic case where so much of what they have to do is awful and they hate it. But they all joined teaching for a really, really good reason. And it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago, in some cases 50 years ago. and helping them reconnect with what that was and say, yes, I still love that. And so if I'm a principal and what I really, really love is the look on the child's face, then let me make sure that in my timetable, I'm doing some classroom work, because that's what nurtures me to do all those other things which I'm good at, but don't really give me as much of a sense of purpose. And help me understand that I need to do that to enable all those other teachers to do what they need to do. And therefore, I get purpose from by extension from their sense of purpose.
Absolutely, yeah, and I want to come back to that. Your comments have made me reflect on a conversation I had with a friend of mine, which had an impact on me, and it was something that it was a bit of a throwaway comment, but we were talking about this concept of looking for purpose and going on big adventures or everything outside of our everyday reality. And he spoke to me about the sitting in rush hour traffic, pitching up at work, sitting at your desk. And the words that he used is he said that is actually deeply sacred. The reality of our everyday lives, the lives that we all face, there's a lot of sacredness in that. It's the fabric of society. And I think it's such a powerful thing to bring people back to happiness is not found out there in some sort of experience, but I can find it within the current reality that I live in.
Yeah, yes. And it's certainly not found in objects. It's not found in the fancy car or the new iPhone or whatever the advertisers are telling you is going to make you happy, because what a surprise. Whatever makes you happy this year, you need to replace next year with the next thing which is going to make you happy, because they never make you happy. All they do is distract you from the unhappiness. So that's fine. We need cars, we need phones, we need the functionality of these objects, but they absolutely are not going to give us satisfaction.
Now you've alluded to we talk about find your tribe in the middle. So two things here. The one is I know that we certainly need to do this life together with others. So connecting with people and talking about the deeper things in life, like you're raising. But just from a culture point of view within your organization, you mentioned earlier that you do look for ways to bring them into a space of reflection around the mission and purpose, just like you do for yourself. Maybe that's missing a little bit out there in corporate as well. It's just how do we get people back into a space of reconnecting with the story, the deeper reasons why we do what we do. How important has that been for you and your work life?
So I think there's a sort of there's a both and here rather than either or. So it's important to create strong corporate cultures. So to create a sense of we as an organization have an identity, and we have a sense of who we are and what we do and why we do it, and importantly how we do it. And we encourage people to buy into that, and people obviously buy into that into different aspects of it to a greater or lesser degree. So that's one half. And the other half is, but in turn, they are all part of other cultures and other systems and other identities. And we need to encourage people to be able to do that and to connect those two. So one of the ways that we try to do that is encouraging people at work, and we do it in staff birthday sessions, for example, talk a bit about who they are and where they're from and what their lives are like, and encouraging people to share some of their sense of identity, so that they feel comfortable being that person at work and not feeling they have to leave that person behind. We've just started a thing where we've done so we don't pay our staff at all well. I'm afraid we can't afford to, but we've decided to give an extra grant to people outside of their salary for something which is to do with personal development. Nothing to do with work. It's not about doing a course to help you with your job. But so, for example, one of our staff members who works in the clinic decided she really wanted to do a hat making course, and she went on a hat making course. Somebody else wanted to go on a yoga retreat, and she went on a yoga retreat, and that's fantastic. So this is an extra bit of money which you can use for anything you want that helps you develop personally. And I think it's important that we're signaling that to people, that we regard that as something which is important to them. And if there are ways of then connecting that thing that they enjoy with our work, then even better. So when we discover that we've got members of the team who love singing, then how do we connect them and create a choir at work, which isn't really about what we do, except it is, because it's about encouraging people to work together and share something that makes them passionate and draw in other people to their passions. So there is a sort of work dimension to it, but it's also just about having fun, and that's okay.
Mm. I suppose it's starting to see each other not just through the lens of someone who fulfills a role in a job description and has some outputs to deliver, but we are essentially a group of humans that have spiritual lives and souls, and there's a lot of depth to us, and we're organizing ourselves in these corporate spaces. So the more that we can create space to grow, to allow stories to flourish, and for us to be able to share our stories as well, then the healthier that space will be, and of course the healthier the individuals within that space will be.
Absolutely. And then, of course, if people find, if one of your concerns as an organization is not just recruiting staff, but retaining staff, then providing a space where people do feel comfortable being themselves, they're much more likely to stay around than if they see you as a job that fulfills functional requirements, because they can find another job that fulfills the same functional requirements but pays a bit more. And I've never, ever believed that you persuade people to stay in a job by offering them more money. Because if that's the only way you persuade people to stay, then you've lost the game. Because then you see off them more the next year and the year after that, and you're not actually helping them to buy into your mission. You're simply bribing them. I do recall when I left advertising and tried to explain to my very, very American boss what I was doing and the fact that I was going to earn no money in my as a Jesuit novice and so on and so forth. He looked at me completely baffled. Obviously, his normal strategy of offering more money wasn't going to work. So he said to me, "What if we offer you less money? Would you stay there?" So I thought, okay, well, you kind of get it, Chuck, but not quite.
Now I'm 42. My wife's 38. We are losing friends left, right, and center from South Africa, immigrating to the UK, Portugal,
Mm.
Australia. Um, this isn't even your country of origin. What we talk about, what you focus on expands, and we have to protect our perspective. You especially are affected by our governments and what goes on in those spaces. We have to deal with load shedding and all that sort of thing. But what is keeping you here? And I know I'm probably touching on something that you've already shared before, but how do you just keep your perspective around our country and in particular in a healthy space?
So it sounds trivial to say the sun shining and the cheap red wine, but it's about quality of life for me, and I think South Africa offers the most exceptional quality of life. That's what drew me here in the first place. It gives me the chance to do amazing purpose-driven work. It's not that I couldn't find purpose-driven work somewhere else, but I do find it here. And all of those things, all of those reasons that people describe as reasons to leave the country, I just see as reasons to stay. So of course, load shedding. Right, how do we cope with that? There's immense poverty. How do we respond to that? There's huge corruption. How do we challenge that? Because what's life without a fight? It's just I'm massively motivated by all that stuff. No, except that not everyone is, and that's okay. I'm still in love with the country. 14 years after I moved here, almost 30 years after I first came here. I'm now literally in love with the country because I married a South African, so I have a sense of weddedness. And part of what drew me to my husband was that he is committed to staying here. He's an Afrikaner. He's a dentist. Most of his contemporaries have left the country, and he said, "I don't want to leave. I love this country. This is my country. I want to stay here. I'm not marrying you so we can move to the UK. I'm marrying you so you can stay in South Africa, and we can find purposeful activity here in South Africa."
Yeah. I think just something you've said is so powerful. What you're doing in this conversation for me is you're reframing what life is actually about. You said what is life without a fight? I think for so many they're trying to create a life with as little amount of pain and as much comfort as possible, where everything from an environmental point of view is predictable and consistent. And you're finding the joy and the purpose in the challenges and the fight and the stuff that we've got to overcome, because That's what it's about.
I'm not a martyr. I'm not opposed to comfort. I like my red wine. I I like good food. That's another good reason to stay in South Africa. But I do hate predictability. So I have to confess that is absolutely a character trait, and I completely understand that is not everyone's character. But when people say to me, "But you have a job where you've got no idea what's going to happen," I say, yes, isn't that brilliant? I've got no idea what's going to happen each day. Wow. And actually, I've got no idea what I'm going to be doing in a year's time or in 2 years' time. If this is a mission given to me by God, then God could have an entirely different plan for me in 2024. I hope not 2024 because I've got some things I want to do then. But anyway, beyond that, that's absolutely fine. Because so again, if I can frame this theologically, I have a very, very strong sense that God's vision for us is always greater than our vision for ourselves. And therefore, the challenge for each of us is not to build some kind of faint echo of what God wants for us, but rather to open ourselves up to accept what God has in plan for us. And that's not going to be comfortable, and it's not going to be predictable. Fantastic. One of the best books of recent spirituality I've ever read, called The God of Surprises. And what Jerry Hughes says in that is that God wants to surprise you, and God wants to be surprised by you. So don't shy away from that. That's if God wanted to create inert objects, He would just have created rocks. But God's created unpredictable human beings because God loves surprises. And as I say, God wants to surprise us. And part of that surprise is difficult stuff. My father died 8 months ago, and that was partly a surprise. He was older, he was getting sick, but he died sooner than we expected. But it's been a hugely powerful experience for my mother and me to go through that, and it's given us a chance to reflect on our faith, to connect with who we are, what our beliefs about what happens after death, and so on. And at the same time, a number of friends of mine have lost parents over the last few months, and that's been, in a strange way, a gift to be able to share that journey with people who are going along the same path, or slightly different versions of the same path, and to be able to support each other in that. So it's not all, of course, it's not all good stuff, but it's all powerful stuff, and it all helps us to grow.
A lot of joy and uncertainty there. I think that's so powerful. I think that's a great place to wrap this conversation up. I love that idea of surprises, and I'm reflecting on a few conversations I've had where people are struggling with just the uncertainty that's currently within their lives. And you're showing that within that uncertainty, there's actually a lot of freedom, a lot of joy, and it certainly requires us to nurture our souls and to recognize what it means to take care of ourselves. But perhaps if we open that door, life and the experience of life can change dramatically. We can stop fighting for things, trying to control, trying to grab onto stuff, trying to shift everything that we don't like, and enter into more of a space of surrender.
Yeah. Yes. Acceptance, accepting God, or accepting what the world is throwing at you, saying, okay, right, well, let's ride this. Let's see where it goes. And and it says every time when we try to control things, obviously by definition we can't control everything, and we just get frustrated when we try to control things. So you mentioned load shedding. That's a really good example. We can't control that. We're stuck with it for as long as it's going to happen. So how do we work with it? And you find yourself doing all kinds of lovely things that you weren't doing before because you were tied to your electrical object and didn't spend the time sitting around the fire. Didn't spend the time sitting and chatting because your phone is your battery's died on your phone. And that's actually, you go to bed early with your lover because you have to, because there's no light. Actually, that's a really great thing. So let's recognize the lack of control gives us freedom.
Absolutely. And Raymond, just to wrap up, just Denis Hurley Centre, Raymond Perrier, just how do people find you? What can people do to perhaps get a bit more proximity to the Denis Hurley Centre, get involved? I know this.
So for those who are in the Durban area, you are most welcome to visit us. So we're right in the centre of the city, as I say, next to the cathedral, the mosque, the old markets. We love having visitors. We particularly love having visitors who want to volunteer. So we always need pairs of hands to help out in our kitchen. That's every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. But you'll find our details. There's a website, there's a Facebook page. You'll find my email address there and my phone number. You want to give me a call, I'm more than happy to chat. And if you also want us to come and talk to you, talk to your company, talk to your church, talk to your community group about what we do and inspire you, then we're happy to do that as well. If you're further afield, then obviously all those electronic media work. And if you fancy a holiday in Durban, come to Durban. It's a fabulous city, and come visit the Denis Hurley Centre when you do.
Well, I can, having been down there and spent some time with you, I can really encourage all of those that are listening to go ahead and take up that offer. And Raymond, just thank you. Thank you for being such an active citizen in our city and for everything that you've done. Every conversation I have with you is so inspiring. So if you are open to it, I wouldn't mind having a couple of follow-up chats down the line. Keep your voice a part of our community.
Happy to do so. It's an honour to be part of Durban and part of what makes Durban tick. And I thank God every day that I get the chance to live in this glorious city and do great work for amazing people.
Great. Thanks for your time today. Hey?
Take care. God bless.